Welcome to Logistics Unplugged. My name is Brian Blalock, and I'm your host, and I'm happy to jump in today to all things logistics. So let's pull back the curtain, take a look under the hood, and have a great discussion. And it's my privilege to have leading the discussion today Bryce Williford. Bryce is the Senior Vice President of 3PL Services for BlueGrace Logistics. Bryce, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So, Bryce, I know we talked about this. If you think about logistics, it's a little bit like the news and the weather, right? Everything that happens in a supply chain, that's the news. What's been bought, what's been sold, what's going on out there in terms of the consumers. And then the weather is all the stuff that happens to the shipments, everything that kind of gets in the middle of that. So today I'm going to ask you to give us the news and the weather. But before we do that, we're going to have a little bit of fun. I know everyone's probably done the 2 truths and a lie, and it's not a good way to start off a marriage, but it's pretty fun for a podcast. So today, we're going to switch it. We're going to do 2 freight truths and a lie, and Bryce and I are going to see how well we know each other and see if we can read each other's hands a bit. So, Bryce, I've got 3 stories to tell you that are interesting things that happen in shipments that I was actually associated with, and you're gonna hold on to your answer so we can keep the suspense up.
Okay.
And you're going to tell me at the end when I was lying.
Okay.
Okay. So, I'm going to tell you about a couple of shipments. One was a tourist bureau that packed up a small container filled with cool tourist stuff, and we took it all over the country. We took it to tailgate parties, to street festivals, to fairs, to a couple of ball games. Had to go in some really interesting, strange time unloads. We actually even filmed the first inaugural release of that with drones at a time that drones weren't very good technology yet. So that was exciting. That's one of my stories. Another story is we did a delivery which was a Triceratops from a reconstructionist facility to the Smithsonian. And if you know, that's a dinosaur. For those who don't know, it's about 22 feet long, weighs about 9,000 pounds. It was crated. Nothing really crazy happened during that, but I just thought it was pretty cool that we actually got to move that. That's story number 2. Okay, story number 3. We had a customer that's main job was tearing out old bowling alleys and doing residential bowling alley installations for usually people that had a lot of money. The particular one that I'm talking about on this delivery was to an NBA basketball player. Well, the install crew missed their flight, couldn't show up, and we had to send a couple of guys from the office here over to Orlando to unload the truck and to get the materials ready. They unfortunately did not get to meet the player, but they did unload the truck. So those are my 3 stories. You got to figure out which one of those is not true.
Okay. And I'm wait till the end to tell you.
You wait till the end. Don't play your hand now. So bring it on. Let's go, Bryce.
All right. So I'm going to do my 2 truths and a lie, 2 freight truths, and a freight lie. So get too broad there. So first story, worked on a prospect, not a customer, prospect, and got to go visit their facility and watch a machine that they had manufactured that could separate a peanut from the peanut shell in bulk. So dump a bag of peanuts in, you get shells and shelled peanuts from the machine. No one touches it. Story number 1. Story number 2, had a customer, not a prospect, that shipped out of the southeast. Had a driver show up to pick up a load at that facility in the southeast with a live alligator in the back of the truck.
Holy cow.
Asked the shipper to just push it on in with the freight because the driver was going to take it home with him. Story number...
I really want that to be true. I really do.
Story number 3, had a customer that had me deliver components of a space shuttle to Cape Canaveral in Florida for NASA.
Okay. That actually trumps my dinosaur. Thanks a lot for that.
I like the dinosaur one.
I really
It's like Jurassic Park. I've seen that in Jurassic Park when they get the dinosaurs, they capture, they put them on a truck and they got their mouths clamped down. You know they're going to get out. So
absolutely.
But your Triceratops wasn't going to run away.
Well, I feel like your alligator might just be the evolution of my Triceratops, which I probably pronounced wrong. So, all right, I'm gonna think over this a bit.
Okay.
I know what I want to be true, and I know actually I'd like all those to be true. All right, so let's jump right into it, Bryce. Let's get into that news and weather report. Let's talk about what you see going on in the market now, and you can take it whatever direction you want, but let's make sure we talk a little bit about the volumes of freight that you see right now and maybe a little bit about capacity costs, some of the things that you see affecting us now.
Sure. Well, I think that the story of the market right now is the freight recovery is not happening the way a lot of people said it was going to. You had various news outlets and pundits in the industry coming into the end of the year, seeing a sort of traditional annual freight cycle with costs increasing, additional spot freight, et cetera, over the holidays, sort of declaring the freight recession over. And freight's going to come back and rates are going to go up and we're going to see spot rates. I think I saw one expert predict spot rates to go up 30 to 40% in 2025. And what we've seen so far throughout this year was the rates going up at the end of the year and through the holiday period was just that. It was just the end of the year, the holiday period. And
Right.
Rates have fallen pretty significantly over the last 3 to 4 weeks. And capacity has come back into the market. I think that many analysts underestimated the impact of having the Christmas holiday and the New Year holiday fall on a Wednesday to a Wednesday, and just how much capacity that took off the road, people taking that whole 10, 12-day period off. And so what we've seen in sort of in conjunction with some severe weather is a relatively stable freight market, which is what we were seeing last year. And this is really what a normal Q1 looks like. A busy period around the holidays, and then a relatively calm end of January into February as we approach the end of Q1 and the start of the Southeast's traditional produce season. So I would expect to see sort of leveling of freight rates, maybe a slight increase, and then seasonal tightness in the spots in the market where there's going to be more demand for trucks. So you'll see that out of Florida with both floral business for Mother's Day and Easter coming up, as well as the start of produce season. And then that'll move into different spots throughout the country. The end of Q1, we could see some tightness as shippers try to push freight off their docks to recognize revenue for that reporting period. And then we get in, towards summer shipping. So you get anybody that's got a traditionally summer product. A lot of beer companies, for example, have bigger summers. I think that'll happen as well. Definitely there's been impact from the weather that we've seen throughout the country. When it's very, very cold in places that are not equipped for cold weather, they don't have salt, they don't have plows, the roads themselves are not properly equipped for ice. That definitely slows down transportation, but overall demand for transportation has been relatively soft. We're not seeing not a huge increase in orders. So the market's been relatively calm so far this year, and definitely not an end to the freight recession, at least not yet.
I got it. And it's funny when you were talking about the weather things, I couldn't help but let my mind think about the snow we had in North Florida a few weeks ago. That's the craziest thing I've seen in my lifetime. So everything affects logistics, right? Everything one way or the other affects it. But I'd like to take what you just said, and I'd like to kind of point it in 3 different directions.
Okay.
One direction being the shipper, one direction being the receiver, and then the other direction being the consumer.
Okay.
Because I want to try to make this, Bryce, we made the bold statement that logistics affects everyone and affects everything, right? Everything you buy, everything you sell, everything you eat, everything you drive, everything you wear. So let's talk a little bit about the shipper, just briefly. Let's talk a little bit about the receiver, the buyer, and then let's talk about the actual end consumer.
Okay.
And how this affects him.
I mean, so from a shipper's perspective, you're trying to either arrange for capacity, and that takes many forms, right? It's not just truckload. We talk about the truckload market, but your intermodal or rail is impacted by things like weather, by some of the economics going on in the country. When we see things like slowdowns at ports, that can impact rail ramp operations and the flow of containers from point A to point B. Certainly LTL. We've seen throughout the country with significant weather, LTL terminal closures or slowdowns. Freight gets jammed up or stuck in certain places as cross-dock operations are slowed. And that impacts a shipper's ability to plan for their outbound shipments, whether it's the amount of warehouse space you have as a limiting factor or simply customer orders, or if you're running a just-in-time and supply chain and you're counting on you've all these variables if you're a shipper, right? You're manufacturing your inbound vendor freight or your materials coming in, customer orders, your labor supply on the dock, right? Warehousing space. So you're counting on, when I pull the lever for my capacity strategy to work for my outbound freight, that it works. And so if you get all that other stuff to work and then you pull the lever, you order your truck or you send your order to your transportation provider and the truck doesn't show up, it snarls everything. And it's the last step of that process in many cases. So definitely the way, whether it's a weather event or a challenging capacity market, can snarl operations for a shipper. Conversely, when the market is soft and capacity is balanced, it's a variable that becomes less of a concern, and a shipper can focus on other parts of their supply chain. And I think that The same dynamics are true for a receiver. Typically, you're a receiver, you're bringing freight in either as a material that you're going to then use to produce your product, or it's a good that you're going to sell, or you're a waypoint in that
Sure.
product's journey. You're managing whatever expectations your ultimate customer has once you've received that product. And your ultimate customer could be another department in your organization. It could be a grocery store or a retail chain or an e-commerce fulfillment site that you're working with. And so the expectations of, must arrive by dates, when product is going to arrive, that part of the supply flow of goods, if you're not getting the products that you're expecting to receive when you're expecting to receive them, that can throw off whatever you have planned next for those products. And then finally, for the consumer, we've seen extreme examples of what a snarled supply chain or lack of capacity can do. We saw that during the pandemic when shelves were empty. But you see that on a regular basis. If you go to your grocery store at a period of time in between when they're getting resupply deliveries from whatever their parent company or whatever their supply DC is, you see shelves are empty. You might be produce, all the bananas are gone, or
Right.
the milk is lower. Right now, eggs are in very short supply because of the avian flu that's going around, and they're certainly more expensive. We go to the store, we expect whatever we're there to buy to be there, and some of those basic items, when they're not there, has an impact on the consumer.
For sure. And you could make the point that if you're showing up at the place you normally shop and the one thing you went there for is not there, then who knows? Maybe you don't go back to that store anymore.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with them. It's just part of the supply chain that we deal with. And it's funny when you talk about the consumer side. We are in this industry. In the interest of disclosure, we are in this industry, and we understand that there's certain value to us in cost being higher. There's certain value to us in the changes to the market, but that doesn't mean that's exclusive to us.
Yep.
We are a gauge for the rest of the economy. So when things are going well for us, they are typically going well for the rest of the economy, and that's a good barometer. So if
Yep.
we're all making more money, we're all doing things better, that means we're all smiling, doing a little bit better. So I'm not saying I want prices to go up. Eventually, the supply in the market will help bring those down, and I am certainly not a financial prognosticator, and I did not stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But we want everyone to do a little better in this, and it helps to know what's going on out there. And speaking of knowing what's going on out there, we talked about the capacity. We talked about the rates. Talk to us about how a shipper can be a little bit more flexible in their processes to see if they can find ways to drive down some of those costs.
Sure. I would tell any shipper, and I tend to tell the clients that I work with that you want to have understanding of how your capacity strategy aligns with your business needs, and then how you execute that capacity strategy. So when you think about how do you choose what type of shipment you're going to create? You have an order; it comes from your customer or from another part of your organization. You need to fulfill that order. Is it an LTL shipment? Is it a parcel shipment? Is it a truckload shipment? There's various variables that impact the service that you're going to choose. How do you do that? What's the process that you go through to determine how you're going to ship something? How do you determine who your carrier or broker partners are for that shipment, the rates that they're going to charge, the services? If you kind of think about sort of a triangle where transportation speed and transportation service levels and cost are sort of all connected, you can generally get something there quickly, but it's probably going to cost more. And if conversely, if you don't care about service, or you don't care about transportation speed, and you have a lot of flexibility, then you can usually get a lower cost. So those variables are sort of interconnected, and understanding how they work together for your business is super important. And so to create flexibility, you want to have a balanced strategy that's got some redundancy, right? So if somebody can't do something, or the optimal conditions you've set for your shipments are not there, you have a way to still execute your transportation. So if you always have a week of lead time for your orders, and that allows you to ship everything via LTL, and then suddenly you have a rush order for a new customer, or a product is out of stock and you get it in, and now you've got to get it to your consignee or your customer by a delivery date that's due. How do you do that? And if you don't have an expediter or a truckload provider or a lever you can pull for a service that's faster, that could be very challenging. And I think that's where, when we work with our clients, we want to talk to them about, what are those redundancies in your supply chain? What is the strategy that you have in place to both procure capacity but also execute that capacity in the market, and whether it's more options or just general better understanding of how that impacts your business, the more flexible you can be when conditions change.
Now, I like it. And talk to me, Bryce. I know this is about the market and about what's going on right now, and we'll be doing more of these. So we'll be
Yep.
talking about the market as it continues to change. So I don't want to make it a year in review, but talk to me a little bit about how different technology and different potential strategies right now can affect how somebody might be able to get the goods to the market when there are challenges.
Sure. Well, there's more data and more visibility available today in the market for all providers, shippers, receivers, carriers, brokers, third-party intermediaries, warehouses. And I feel like every month that goes by, there's a new technology, there's a new AI application, there's new visibility tools available to help people understand their supply chain. The data that's available today to the general logistics market about even just capacity levels in different areas is vastly different than it was when I started in the industry in 2008. There were bigger brokers and some of the bigger carriers that did a lot of research, and some bigger shippers that ran large, like networks throughout the U.S. Or throughout North America. They had a lot of data, but that was pretty much it. Today, that data is very available and a lot of different resources where you can purchase or sign up for, subscribe to, receive that data. There's a lot of interconnectivity between different supply chain parties that didn't exist before. And so just access to that visibility allows customers, shippers, carriers, receivers to mitigate the risks that they might not have been able to mitigate 10, 15 years ago. Now, there's other risks today. Certainly, some of the risks that come with the potential for fraud and things like that with cybersecurity and stuff are bigger today than they were at that time. But overall, better visibility, better data is a great way to combat any risks, change management, et cetera, within the supply chain.
And that security part, and I didn't even plan to go down that hole, but it's such a big thing right now, and we see so much of it. And I mean, it is so important that our data is protected, that our products are protected, and all the technologies that are out there, we have to take advantage of that. We have to learn how to bring those into the mix. So I'm glad you brought that up. And you also brought a couple of other things. And we talk about being agnostic to mode, and you brought that up. And it is important because, when truckloads got smaller, LTL grew, right?
Mm-hmm.
When sometimes orders get larger, people have to learn how to migrate from LTL to truckload. Yep. So talk to me a little bit about that learning how to be that flexible and learning how to understand when you shift from one mode to another and where it starts from.
Yeah, I mean, understanding the needs of your end customer and the willingness your organization has for change, I think is super important. Again, going back to my little triangle of cost, transportation speed, and service levels, if you're really dialed in on how you can move those levers, and if you can even get down to the customer location level where you've got a certain customer that has very strict MABD or arrival dates, and you know that you can't be early or late, right? That really, when you start working backwards to a ship date, to a target ready date in the warehouse, to an order ready date within the supply chain itself, those various thresholds, you can really start working back upstream to ultimately, like, when does an order need to be placed and when does the inventory need to be in stock to be able to fulfill that order, as compared to a customer that maybe gives you a week to deliver something. And you can deliver it in two parts. You don't even have to deliver the order all at once. Now you can look at whether you have a TMS platform or some sort of order management system that allows you to combine orders together, make multi-stop truckloads, build bigger LTL shipments, or create consolidation. It opens up a lot of opportunities for you. But if you, as the shipper, you got to understand what those limiting factors are in your supply chain. Obviously, that's something that we try to help our customers with, that we have that relationship with, and certainly something that's available in the marketplace. If you, as a shipper, are thinking, I don't really know how to do that, like, how should I do that? Like, that's something that's available. It's certainly something that we help our customers with.
Love that. And it's interesting. You can't fix anything if you can't measure it.
Yeah.
So starting from that single block of, it's an order now, what is it? When is it a shipment?
Yep. That conversion from order to shipment is critical. And I think that even like basic TMS platforms, 10, 15 years ago, loads were loads. Yep. I'm using air quotes. You can't see me, but and now the concept of orders and order management and the order to load conversion, you could have multiple orders on one load. You could have multiple stops on one load. You could have multiple consignees on one load, again, depending on what your business looks like.
Yeah, it's funny. A few years ago, I think you and I did one of these, and you taught me a little bit about pool distribution, about how you can take truckloads, get it to LTL locations in other parts of the country, and then have a better LTL distribution from there. Now, I don't want to get all nerdy on the freight side of this. We can geek out on this stuff all day. And Bryce, we're kind of getting near the end of time here, and I want to thank you so much for being here. I learn something every time we sit down and talk, but we have to get to the real heart of the matter. We have to find out where our lies were at the beginning of this story.
Let's do it.
So I'm going to go with my stories first, and I want you to tell me, number one, was it the Tourist Bureau? Number two, was it my dinosaur in the Smithsonian? Or number three, was it my bowling guy?
Well, I feel like the way you told the story, and I could be wrong. I've got a 33% chance here of getting this right. But it just felt like there was a little more passion with stories 2 and 3. So I'm going to go with number 1, the Tourist Bureau was the lie.
Wow. I might start playing poker, actually.
No, I'm wrong. What was it?
You are wrong. The fake story was the Smithsonian. I've never even been there. I'm embarrassed to say. The Triceratops. I had to look up a couple of different dinosaur types before I came here. So I'm feeling good about myself now, Bryce.
Well, I like it because sometimes you play this game and what is the definition of a lie, right? So we could probably do a whole non-freight related,
and we could get in a lot of trouble over this
a show on that. But you're like, it was a Stegosaurus. I'm like, oh, okay. So you did move a dinosaur to the Smithsonian. It was just a different dinosaur. So, but all right. So my 3, I had my peanut machine for my prospect. I had my alligator in the truck for my customer in the Southeast, and then I had my NASA delivery in Cape Canaveral.
I think I want so badly for that alligator to get in that truck that I can't vote against myself. It's like, even though you're going to lose by 42 points in a ball game betting on the other team, you can't do that. So I'm going to take the least exciting off the table, and I'm going to take the peanuts off the table, and I'm going to say that's your lie.
Nope, that was the truth. I was actually in a different country to visit that customer. And I was standing out pretty far from the city I had flown into and at this factory where these machines were made. It was absolutely fascinating to see. But no, my lie is the NASA delivery. I've never done that.
And I was 100% sure you were a rocket scientist.
Yeah, there you go. Just deliver the freight.
Well, clearly, neither of us should play poker professionally. We've decided that. But actually, both of us did get fooled.
We bluffed each other. That's good.
True.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll play heads up and see how this goes. So Bryce, we got that part of it out. I'd like you, if you don't mind, share one, and we'll speak to the shippers a little bit because we know there's a lot of those that are listening. So talk to the shippers a little bit, and let's see strategically if you can offer just 1 or 2 tips for next actions for them to kind of help things out.
Yeah, I'll go back to understanding the core piece of your business as it relates to your supply chain and where service and price sort of interact with each other and where your flexibility lies. Then number 2, and maybe this should be number 1, is, have a capacity strategy and understand how you're going to execute that capacity strategy. Where do you get your rates? How do you get your rates? What do you do if they don't work? How do you execute that route guide or those rates? And what do you do when everything goes to crap? What do you do when that happens? Because the supply chain world is always changing and evolving. There's a ton of different impacts on company supply chains, whether it's weather or market events or labor issues, right? We've seen that throughout the country the last couple of years between rail and port strikes and things like that. What do you do when what you're counting on doesn't work? Do you have somebody you can call? Do you have partners you work with? And if you can understand those things and be really good at it, your supply chain is going to be in a good spot.
That's a great tip. I think contingency is a great word. Mm-hmm. Be ready for the unexpected. And there's a lot of that in our industry. So listen, thank you so much for being here. That's a wrap. We'll see you next time. We've got an exciting episode dropping next Tuesday.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.